Not my gig. All right, let's begin. So we're going to know our rights. You might have heard some of this in school before, but what the heck does it actually mean? So I'm going to try again to not go on so many tangents, but okay. So we have the Constitution, right? Like, and the Constitution is basically like the highest order of the law. Yes, we have a president. Yes, we have Congress and the Senate. They are all beholden to the Constitution. That is actually the biggest, baddest part of American government is the Constitution. Everybody else has to work through that. That's like bing, 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 way up at the top is the Constitution. Everybody else just works within the realm of the Constitution. Okay. And it was written a long time ago. And we're going to get into that too, because there are things that were written 300 years ago that we're like, why did they write that? We will get there. When they wrote the Constitution, it was not perfect and they knew it. And so they knew they were going to have to add pieces to it. Okay. So that's what we're getting into. We had the Constitution by itself. Then we added what was called the Bill of Rights, which was 10 extra pieces that they added that were like, let's cover the important things about what our government actually is. They basically just made a constitution. They were like, ooh, we're missing pieces. And so then they added it in. So that's what we're getting into. So here's your Constitution. And then there's a piece that added. And we're going to talk about the first thing that was added. And these little pieces that are added are called amendments. And the First Amendment is powerful. And it's the one that affects us probably the most in our life from day to day ever. This is the one people will have lots of arguments about this one. It gets applied a lot of different places. Let me also say too, that if you ask me a question or something and I don't know, I'm just going to straight up tell you I don't know, because I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a politician and I'm not a government official. I just know this from my own personal research. And so I welcome your questions. I just will tell you I don't know. I'm happy to go look it up for you later and get back to you. But feel free to ask. Just know that I'm okay with saying I don't know something. Also, I think that's a powerful skill people need to know. I don't know. It's okay to say that. It's okay. All right. So First Amendment. The First Amendment guarantees you as a citizen the freedom of speech. That means you get to say what you want to say. Let me also say this too before we get into this. Are your rights absolute? Does that mean that you can say whatever you want to say anytime, any place, no matter where you are? The answer is no. It's like freedom of speech for the most part. You cannot go into a crowded movie theater and shout fire. That is you would say that's my freedom of speech. I get to say fire in the middle of a movie theater, but actually no, you cannot do that because that would be illegal. That would be like inciting, there's a law that you break. I can't remember the exact like title of the law, but essentially that you cause mayhem and chaos by saying that because you make people think that they're going to, die in a fire. So your rights are not absolute. That doesn't mean that you get to say whatever you want. Same thing with like you being a student in a school. Your rights are not absolute in your school either, because the school gets kind of to function as its own little like micro government almost. So you can't walk around, swearing every swear word that all up and down the hallway. I mean, maybe some schools will let you do that, but I know for most folks, they would say that's not allowed. And you could say, well, it's my free speech. And then they'd be like, no. So your rights are there. It's also not absolute. But I will say this came from, because there are a lot of other governments, more totalitarian governments that don't have as much, freedoms for their people, where you can't speak out against the president, as an example, or their leader. There are governments that exist in the world where if you were to speak ill about the leader, you could be arrested or thrown in jail. So that's good that we have the ability to talk openly and critique things about our government, or about, that's why we have these social media, is so that we can put whatever we want out there. Although they're even talking about maybe we need to limit that because there's a lot of social media misinformation going around. So freedom of speech, tricky. Freedom of press, that means we're allowed to have media, and media is really important. If you have government controlled media, they get to control the narrative. They get to decide what gets said. And so again, there are governments in the world where the media is run by the government. The government wants only good things to be put out about the leaders all the time, and you're not allowed to critique them. A free press means that media can kind of put out whatever they want. And a lot of media places, do a lot of research, do make sure that their sources are pretty good before they post stuff. You also have garbage media places that are, tabloid-esque or clickbait, and they just want people to click on their stuff. So you have to also be able to sort through it, but we are allowed in America the freedom of press so that our media is not government run. They can run their own media company and basically put out whatever they want, true or not. Freedom of religion. You are able to practice the religion that you want or practice no religion. There are governments where there is one religion that is allowed, like you have to be this, or they are a-religious and they say you cannot have a religion. America is cool in that you can practice your religion or choose to not practice the religion. You're not going to be persecuted or arrested for that. This also gets brought up though, because the Supreme Court will hear cases from time to time about people saying my right to my freedom of religion was violated. So in fact, this just happened recently where there was a man who was on death row. He was going to be executed, and he wanted his pastor to come in and be with him during the moment of execution and pray with him. And the prison was not going to allow the pastor to come in. And so they filed for a stay of execution, which means don't execute me yet. There's a problem here. And they filed for that. And the Supreme Court said, yes, we will hear your case about this. And so he has not been executed yet because the Supreme Court is going to hear this case to see, was his right to freedom of religion violated, or would it be violated if his pastor was not allowed to come in? I don't know how they're going to rule on that. And I certainly don't have I'm not going to share my opinion on what I think. That I've really thought about what my opinion is on that. But that's an example of where freedom of religion is still being debated today, where it's like, okay, can I do this? Can I not? People, saying I'm in the military, but I must wear, a head covering for my religion. But the military might say, no, you can't, and that might be something that gets argued about as well. The right to peaceably assemble. You're allowed to gather. This is where our right to protest comes in. And people have been protesting from day one. We protest a lot. Does that mean that you and 100 of your buddies can just show up in the middle of the street one day? No. Usually, most of the time, almost all the time, you have to get a permit that says you're allowed to be there. And some places have specific spots they want you to stand if you're going to do like a First Amendment, protest or whatever. But normally you would need a permit for that. Right to petition the government for grievances. So you can write a petition. Anybody know what a petition is? A petition is where you say, I believe, so I'll give you an example. Ellen should have, 10 weeks of vacation a year. That's not real. This is, just an example. And then you can get people to sign it. And then that can get presented to the government. So a petition is where you can, you've made a petition before. That's awesome. Yeah. So another petition could be something in your schools where you're like, I believe we should have soda back at school or whatever. Or I believe that, oh my gosh, something that they could actually change. We should be recycling at school. Sign my petition that says we should be recycling at school, something like that. So the right to petition is something. Yes, we do have quite a few freedoms. We do. And people do get mad, but it's like part of the thing is we're all still working out what it means. Our Constitution is something that's not fixed in stone. We are still kind of figuring out what that means. And again, it was written in like 1789 or wherever or whatever. I might be wrong on that date, but it's like around that time. That was a long time ago. And so things like the internet didn't exist. So we have to try to translate what the world with internet looks like through this Constitution. So it's interesting. All right. First Amendment is a big one. Okay. All right. Second Amendment. You might hear a lot about this in the news. Might hear a lot of people talking about this because it gets a lot of press. Okay. This is one that's all over the media all the time. The right to bear arms. So, being able to own a firearm. Now, the issue comes with, what should be required to own a gun? Should you be background checked? Should you have to pass a test? Should you blah, blah, blah. And we're not going to get into that. Again, not a forum for a political discussion, just telling you what the amendment says. It says you have the right to bear arms. Also, a well-regulated militia. That is a really tricky one that they don't really like. It's a really interesting way that they wrote that when they wrote the Bill of Rights. And that would be James Madison who wrote the Bill of Rights. We don't really know what that means. Like, did he mean we need to have a big old army? Like, okay, because we have that, or does that mean we need to have tiny militia groups always at the ready to go? Because we had both back then. Well, actually, we didn't. We had like each state or each region of a state would have its own tiny army, and that was a militia. There are still militia groups today that like a region will get together and be like, we have our own militia. But did they also mean we need to have a big old military? For a long time, not a long time, but when we first began as a country, they were like, we don't need to have a big military. That costs a lot of money. We just got away from Great Britain. They have a big military. We don't need that. But then they decided, yes, we actually need a military after all. So it's a whole thing. Does it tie into non-guns like spears and stuff? That is a great question. And I don't know, although I imagine arms would mean weapons. So like you have the right to weapons. This is also one that various countries do not have. So I know in Australia, they used to have like everybody can own guns. And then they did like a buyback program because they said, we don't want the general public to have any kind of weapon anymore. And so they like bought back the weapons from folks. And so now only if you're in the military or if you're like police or SWAT do you get a weapon. Again, this is not me saying this is the way to do it. I am just offering information. So that's it. So we don't really know what they meant by well-regulated militia. People have been interpreting this ever since, but don't really know what they mean by that. Also know that when they wrote this, we had just gotten done with the Revolutionary War. So a lot of this came from trying to figure out how to make a country and not have the same problems we just had with England. Okay. So this probably could mean we need to have our own army to defend ourselves against someone like England who might try to come take us back, or another country that wants to conquer us. Nope. We need to have our own army that we can dispatch whenever we need. All right. Third Amendment. This was the weirdest one. This is the weirdest one. No quartering soldiers without consent. This is the one that is related to the Revolutionary War, because before we were an independent nation, England would send soldiers to come just be in the colonies and would insist that you house them. So you might one day in your house, mind your own business, have two soldiers walk up and say, knock, 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 we live here now. You have to feed us, give us a room, keep us here until we are done doing whatever our assignment is. And you might be like, I can barely afford to feed myself. How am I going to feed you? And they'll be like, too bad, figure it out. So this is basically, you don't have to put anybody in your house. And this came directly from England, made us do that. And so we were like, we're not doing this anymore. So there's no more quartering soldiers. This one doesn't really get applied many places. I don't think there's been a lot of Third Amendment stuff recently, but this is also, these amendments are the basis for when they argue cases. They'll say, based on the Second Amendment, we ruled this way, says the Supreme Court or whatever. Or I think this is a violation of my Third Amendment right. And so blah, blah, blah. So even though these things are 300 years old, we're still using them as like reasons to, sue people or reasons to prosecute people for criminal things. All right. Fourth Amendment. No search and seizure of your property, possessions, person, or papers without a warrant and probable cause. I'm not sure if they put warrant or warranty in the actual verbiage. The warrant must be specific on the place. Okay, so this means also that the police cannot just come up to your door and come on in. Just because you're a cop does not mean you can just waltz into my house. You cannot do that. You can only do that if you have a warrant. And a warrant means it's permission signed by a judge and you have good reason to come into my house without my permission. Otherwise, they're not allowed. That's why when they come to your door, and this is where it applies to you, if someone comes to your door, you do have the right to say no. If they say, may we come in and have a look around, you're allowed to say no. Now, if they have a warrant, it does not matter. You can say no, up, down, all day long. They get to come in. But if they're ever like, can we come in and have a look around? You certainly don't have to. You also could say yes, especially if you're like, I have nothing to hide, please come in. But your Fourth Amendment says you certainly do not have to let people search or take any of your possessions unless they have a warrant. Now, let's say that they think you've been doing some shady stuff, on the computer. Maybe you've been doing some spying or you've been doing some stuff, selling some stuff on the the dark web or whatever, they might then, if they have a warrant, they're like, okay, we have good reason to think that they're doing it, and here's all our evidence, can you sign this, judge? And the judge says, yep. Then they'll come in, they'll just take your computer, and then they'll look at it. So it does not guarantee they'll never look at stuff or they'll never take stuff, but it does mean that if they don't have a good reason, they will do it. Now, when this comes to arrests, or like let's say you get pulled over, maybe not you, let's say a person gets pulled over by a cop and they're driving a car. Roll the window down, hello, 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 you were going a little fast back there, blah, blah, blah. They are not allowed to go into your car. Now, let's say you roll down the window and they suddenly smell a bunch of marijuana. And I'm saying you, I mean a person, because surely you will not be doing this. But let's say they roll the window down, they smell a bunch of marijuana. That's now probable cause, which is why they don't have a warrant, but they have enough reason to go in and look in your car. So let's say they say you smell like marijuana, get out, I'm going to look in your car. So in that case, probable cause is where they would go and just look. How they actually get trained on what it smells like. And also cops encounter a lot of pot, and so they're very familiar with the smell. Another thing they might smell, and this is really unfortunate, but like, let's say there's a missing person and then they come to somebody's house and they smell decomposition. They'll say that's probable cause, I'm coming in anyway. So that's where you don't need a warrant, is if you have enough reason to believe that there's a crime of some sort that has been or is being committed, then you can do that. Other example is somebody's pulled over and you smell alcohol on their breath. Okay, I have probable cause, and that means I'm going to get you out and we're going to do a breathalyzer, and I'm not going to let you drive your car home. So you either need a warrant or you have to have probable cause. They cannot just waltz into your house and take your stuff for no reason. And you're going to say, but I think that's happened before. It has happened before, and they will get in big trouble if they do it, because that's a constitutional violation of your rights. So the warrant also has to be specific about the place and person. They can't just say, I have a warrant to search everybody on Oak Grove Road in Dahlonega. Nope, you cannot do that. It has to be, I have a warrant to search Ellen's house at this address. Okay, that's it. It can't be just, a wide area that they search. All right, moving on. Fifth Amendment. Okay, so you're not going to have to answer for a crime unless you're indicted. It looks like indicted. The word is indicted. Indicted means that you've been charged with a crime. Usually, if you're being indicted for something, it means that a special jury has looked at a bunch of evidence, and they'll say, do you think that there's enough evidence here to charge somebody with a crime? And then they'll go, yes, we think that there has been. So that's what indicted means, but you don't have to answer for it unless you've been indicted. So let's say, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of a famous example. I don't know. This happens a lot with like celebrities too. So, okay, we'll use O.J. Simpson trial if you guys are familiar with it. He was not charged with murder until a jury he wasn't in this jury. A grand jury looks at this evidence, and all they have to decide is there enough evidence to charge someone with a crime? So that's step one. Grand jury looked at the evidence that they had, and they said, yes, we think there's enough reason to believe he might have committed a crime. So then they charged him, they indicted him. Then he goes to a real trial with a jury, which, if you're not familiar, he did get acquitted, and acquitted means they found him not guilty. And again, this is not, let me tell you my opinion on O.J. Simpson. This is just me using an example. He had to be indicted first before he went to trial. But he doesn't have to answer for that crime until he's been indicted. That's so they don't just pin a crime on you for no reason. Also, no double jeopardy. Anybody know what double jeopardy is? Anybody heard of that? I'm going to give you like 10 seconds, because then I'm just going to tell you. Double jeopardy. Okay, people say yes. Double jeopardy means you cannot be tried for the same crime twice. So O.J. Simpson, as an example again, he was tried for the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson. He was found not guilty. If they find a bunch of new evidence, can he go be tried for that again? No, you only get tried for the same crime one time. That's and that prevents people from being tried over and over and over again for the same thing, because that could be ridiculous and really unfair. Let's say that you're innocent and you keep being tried over and over. That's wrong. So that prevents that from happening. There are cases where people will be tried for something and then they're found guilty and they're in jail, but then they appeal and they say, my lawyer was not good, he didn't represent me well, or the jury was not impartial, and then they'll throw the case out and just start over. So that's different than being tried for something 2 times. If they throw the case out completely and they say, let's just start all over again, that technically is not double jeopardy. There is a man named Curtis Flowers who was on death row, I believe in Mississippi or Alabama. I can't remember exactly when. He was tried for the same crime 6 times, but it's because they kept throwing it out, because they kept ruling. There was either a hung jury, which means not everybody could agree, or there was reason to believe that he was not represented well by his attorney, or that the other attorney was withholding information because they have to share all their evidence together. A lot of reasons. Yeah, so if someone's found guilty, they can request an appeal. And the appeal works like, let's say you are charged with a crime in the county that you live in, so Dawson or Lumpkin. You go have a trial, and then you are found guilty for whatever reason, whether you actually did it or not. Let's just say you're found guilty. You can appeal it to a district court then, and then they can look at it. And if they deny it, then you can appeal it, I think, once more. It depends on the crime too, but you can appeal it up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gets like 1,000 submissions of cases a year, something like, please look at my case, Supreme Court. They only take about 100. So your chances of the Supreme Court hearing your appeal is really, really low. But you do get a chance to appeal it to the next step, which is like an appellate court or a district court. Also, the state's not going to take your private property without compensation. This is called eminent domain. Well, let's say you've got a really nice piece of land and you love that piece of land, and maybe it's been in your family for 150 years and you love that land. Let's also say that the state of Georgia decides that they really, really, really need to put a pipeline down that property, and they're going to take that property from you. Can they do that? Yes, they can. But they can't just take it from you. They have to pay you fair value for that land. Even if you're like, please don't take my land, they technically are able to do that, but they must compensate you. And that's called eminent domain. Happens with roads. It happens with, like I said, pipelines. If they find like an oil reserve or something like that, they'll pay you a lot of money, but they can take it. They just have to pay you fairly for it. So eminent domain. Pleading the fifth, you'll hear this too. It's basically where you have the right to not say anything. Like if you're charged with something, you don't have to say a word. Now, in some cases, that looks bad. Like that can be like, people are like, why are you saying that? But it is your right. If someone charges you with a crime, you don't have to say or defend yourself at all with your words. You could just be like, I'm not saying a word. And then you can get your lawyer involved and they will speak on your behalf. But people do this because they might be afraid to say something, get themselves in trouble, or they'll say the wrong thing, or they don't know what to say. So that's called pleading the fifth, which means it's like you don't have to just say yes if you did do it. Yeah. So also that's the other thing is like maybe you did do something bad, but you don't have to just come out and say yes. You just let your attorney try to sort it out for you. Also, due process. Due process is another fancy sounding language for you deserve the right to things being fairly done under the law. You are not just going to get charged with something without there being reason to believe that you got charged with it. You can't just get thrown in jail and not know what your charges are. If they don't tell you your charges, that's a problem. You're supposed to know what you're being charged with. You also can't just go straight to prison without a trial. Like you've got to be tried. That's due process. So it's basically like we got to go through the process correctly. And if we don't go through the process correctly, that's a violation of your rights. If you did something wrong and you get caught and you get, charged, tried and found guilty, oh well, too bad. But if the proper order of things, the proper way of things didn't get done, that's a problem. So like no one's gonna, and this has happened before, people just throw you in prison and for no reason, or you don't know what you're charged with. That happened in other places, but actually it's happened here too. But that's a violation of Fifth Amendment right. Moving on. Sixth Amendment, a speedy, LOL, speedy, because some of these trials take a long time to get to, but they're not going to want you to sit in jail for 20 years before you get a trial. And your trial has to be in public, which keeps it fair, because then people can watch it or be a part of it. If you have private trial, that's no good. We want people to be able to see it. It holds people accountable. An impartial jury, or a jury of your peers is what they will say too. Let's say that you're charged with a crime against, if you're a man and you're charged with a crime against a woman and the jury is entirely women, that may not be impartial because they might feel sympathetic towards the victim. So you're going to want a mixed pool of people. Similarly, there have been cases where there has been a defendant who is Black and there have been too many white people on the jury, and that's been seen as impartial because they're like, this is not a fair representation of the population and we think they may not find them. This is not saying that white people will, it's just like there have been cases of this where this has happened, where they're saying this was not appropriate representation of our population. It needs to be more diverse. It can't be all white people in this jury. That's not impartial if it's a Black defendant. This has happened before, and cases have been thrown out for this and retried so that it can be more diverse in how it's offered with a jury to look at the evidence. You're entitled to a lawyer. You do not have to go in lawyerless. You will get one, and they'll say this in the Miranda rights. If you cannot afford one will be given to you anyway. You will get a public defender who will provide you counsel for free. So you get a lawyer no matter what. Now, there are some people who are like, I will represent myself. I know enough about law. I will do it. That historically is just does not go well for them. Typically, just if you get in a situation, lawyer up, let them do it. They went to law school. Most of us did not, I imagine. So let them do it. Know what charges you're being accused of. Please ask if you're ever in a situation where you are, hopefully not, but if you're ever in a situation, you need to ask what you're being charged with, because you have a right to know based on the Constitution. Seventh Amendment. Even civil cases have a right to a jury if more than $20. That's what's written in the Constitution. More than $20. Back in the day, $20 was a decent amount of money. Now it's like, if someone is suing someone, it's going to be more than $20 at stake. So let's talk a little bit about what a civil versus a criminal case is. There are two different types of cases. And you hear about this. A criminal case is filed by the government. You broke the law. You harmed society. Let's say I'm trying to think of something. Theft. You stole something from somebody, or people do this all the time, but you got into a fight with someone and you hit them. That would be like assault or battery or something like that. That would be what you're charging it. And that is a crime against society. So you have to pay for that. And that is a criminal case. And by pay for that, I mean there's punishment involved, like jail time or a fine or whatever. That's a criminal case. And it's usually the state of Georgia versus so-and-so. A civil case is filed by a private party. So that could be your dog pooped in my yard and my yard is worth $20,000. And because your dog took one poop on my yard, it ruined my yard. And so I'm going to sue you for the cost of my yard. Almost always is there money involved in civil cases. It's almost always like, not that somebody broke the law, but that I have an issue with you and you need to pay me. That's the deal. And then they go to court, and then the jury, because you get to have a jury in a civil case too, they'll listen and decide what happens. And there's always more than $20. So my husband, I'll give you an example. My husband was on a civil jury case, or a civil case. He was in the jury where someone hit somebody with their car and they hurt their back, and they were suing for the cost of their medical bills. So that was a civil case. Like, it was an accident. Nobody was charged with anything. No one went to jail, but it still went to court because it was a private person suing another private person. It could also be a business suing someone. So you could be like, my company is suing you because you stole our idea or you stole our logo, so that's a civil case. A criminal case is you broke the law. You did something, harmed against society. So now you have to repay society with your punishment. So it sounds harsh, but that's what it is. Civil versus criminal. What else about divorce court? Divorce court is civil. That is a civil case. So custody proceedings, probate court, which is like your wills when someone passes away, like who goes to what, if there's any kind of dispute about that, anything. So yes, custody, divorce court, custody, probate, and then suing people for money. Those are all civil cases, not criminal. Okay, Eighth Amendment. Did I cover all of that? Yep. Eighth Amendment. So no excessive bail. Well, let's talk about what is bail. Bail is, let's say you are put in jail. So you haven't had your trial yet, but they've put you in jail because they think that you've done something. They, they've arrested you. They say, we're putting you in jail because you trespassed on this person's property. And so you're going to go to jail until you can have your trial. And then a bail is where you can pay to get out of jail until your trial happens. So, and the judge will set your bail like, okay, your bail is at $2,000. So the purpose of bail is to guarantee that you show up for your trial. So let's say you go, now I'll give you a better example because sometimes bails are like $50,000 or $100,000. Let's say $50,000. Say you do something bad, you go to jail, you either have to stay in jail until your trial or somebody that you know can pay to have you released until your trial. It's $50,000. Now, you will get that money back when you show up for your trial. So it's almost like we're going to hold this for you until you come back and then we'll give it back to you. So it's like a way to get you back. And then if you don't show up, not only are you in big trouble, but they keep the money. So that's what bail is, but you can't make it too expensive. So let's say, you can't have $1 million bail if you for a certain crime. Now, some people get really, really high bails, but it's because they think they, can't afford it, or it's a really awful thing that they did and they're going to keep them there and they don't want them, whatever. Sometimes they deny bail and say, you're not going to be allowed to leave. No excessive fines. Let's say you throw a styrofoam cup on the side of the road. They're not going to give you a $5,000 fine for that. That would be excessive. No cruel and unusual punishment. So you're not allowed to, this is really tricky because sometimes this one gets argued about, but historically people were tortured or whatever as punishment. Or, I'm going to withhold food from you if you're in prison and I won't let you eat for days because you're acting up or whatever. That's cruel and unusual. You can't deny people their basic needs. So that would be an 8th Amendment violation, is cruel and unusual punishment. Prevent the government. The purpose of it is to prevent the government from inflicting harsh penalties from you. What's interesting about the Constitution is a lot of it is, and you can see this is coming off the revolution, is to protect us from the government, which the government is there to support us as well. That's like the purpose, is to provide structure and to support us, as citizens. It's also, the Constitution keeps a healthy distance between us and the government. It says you can't just give people harsh penalties for no reason. That's not okay. So that's the other thing to know about it. They tried to keep us, and again, this is coming from England. England was, at the time, this was more common to have methods of torture or to levy ridiculous taxes or harsh penalties on people. And then they got rid of that. So that's what they give them. 9th Amendment. The rights of the people are not limited to what's in the Constitution. They basically are saying, if we didn't mention it, it's still okay that there could be rights that we didn't talk about here. Like, this is like the etc. Amendment, where it's like, these are all your rights, etc. It could be other stuff too. So the right to try to get a job, the right to dye your hair green, self-expression, the right to privacy is not listed in the Constitution, but it's covered here, where it's like, this is right, that people are allowed to do. And the right to privacy also includes marriage. So the right to go get married, the right to keep what's happening in your marriage private, the right to have your personal life separate from your, public, life and your work life. All of that is like not expressly like written in the Constitution, but it's covered here, where it's like, you have rights that are not listed as well. They were really smart because they were like, we don't know all the rights that we should have written. And so we're just going to say, guess what? There are some rights we didn't even talk about because we don't know them, but they're still there. They still exist just because it's not written here. All right, moving on. 10th Amendment, any power not specifically given to the federal government belongs to the states. So they're saying if the Constitution doesn't say it belongs to the federal government, now y'all understand the federal government's like our national government. And then we have a state government. So you've got the government of the United States of America, the federal government, and you've also got the state of Georgia government. They are two different things. The federal government ensures all of the things I just told you about. The state government is what provides you the right to a free education. That is a state right. Your ability to go to school every day for free and how things get taught and who pays for it, and well, that is a state thing. So just know that, like, if it's not listed as a federal government responsibility, it then belongs to the states or to the people themselves. And that's because they did not want the federal government to have too much power. They wanted to give the states the power to make individual state choices on what they wanted to do. So education is an example of a state power, a state responsibility. And we're going to go rapid fire through the rest. And because y'all have questions, and we'll get to that in the end. So those are the first 10, the Bill of Rights. I'm going to go through, and you see it's only one sentence. So we are not going to land on these for a very long time, because again, I want to respect y'all's time. But these are all the rest of the amendments, everything else that we've added to the Constitution, including the very latest thing. So the 11th Amendment says federal courts cannot hear certain lawsuits against states, but this still happens. So this one, I think they thought it was going to be more sweeping and like, the federal government's not going to hear certain lawsuits about states. Well, most of the time, if states are arguing with each other, or there's a private entity, in another country that sues a state, like let's say, I'm going to give a random example. Like this does not exist. I'm making this up out of my head. Let's say the country of Italy wants to dock their ship in the Savannah River, and and they end up in Georgia, but then something happens and some sort of issue occurs, and the country of Italy wants to sue the state of Georgia. This amendment traditionally would be like, we're not going to get into that. That's between y'all. But now technically would. They kind of go referee those things anyway. So this didn't really happen the way I think they thought it would. 12th Amendment, procedure for electing the president and the vice president. We got to know how we're going to elect these people. So the 12th is like how this happens, the electoral college, how all the crazy election, like we have a weird election, the way it's set up, that happens in the 12th Amendment. The 13th abolished slavery. That was a very important amendment, and it took a long time coming, but it abolished slavery. 14th Amendment is the Citizenship Clause. And a lot of these come from just because slavery was abolished, Americans, especially, Black people, were not allowed to exercise constitutional rights because the local governments would be restrictive and they would not allow them. So things like the grandfather clause. So, and we'll get into the right to vote on the 15th Amendment, but they would say if your grandfather couldn't vote, then you're not allowed to vote. So even though everyone was technically allowed to vote, they would make these crazy little rules to keep people from being able to vote. And it was discriminatory. And that was the purpose of it, was to discriminate against Black people. So that is why they had to start saying, okay, we abolished slavery, but y'all are now being weird about who is a citizen or not. So let's be clear, anyone born in the United States or naturalized through immigration process is a citizen. So they're saying, we need to make this clear because y'all are acting up. These people are citizens too. If they are born here, they have just as many rights as you do. So that's where this came from, this 15th Amendment. 16th Amendment says the government is allowed to levy a federal income tax. So basically, when you have to pay taxes, you're going to pay, because we live in the state of Georgia, state income tax. So you're going to pay a chunk of what you made that year back to the state of Georgia to help fund things like education. You're also going to pay a chunk of what you made that year to the federal government, because they need to run things for us too. So they used to say, we're not going to, because again, England was giving us a bunch of taxes. That's like the Boston Tea Party happened because of that, because we were mad that they were taxing our tea and our stamps. And we're like, we're not going to have a federal income tax because that was what England did. And then guess what? We decided to do it anyway. It took us a long time, took about 100 years to get there. But then we decided we needed to, pay for things as well on the federal level. So that's what that is. They basically said, but they had to write in the Constitution, the federal government is also allowed to tax people. So we pay more taxes now, but taxes pay for things. So, not going to get into taxes either. 17th Amendment. The states get to elect their senators. So it used to be that senators were appointed to their positions. Now the people were like, no, we want to say in who gets to be the senator too, please. And so now the states are able to elect their senators as well, instead of just them being appointed by the state government. Like the state of Georgia could be like, we believe these people should be senators. Now it's no, they have to run for election like everybody else does. And then also like what being a senator details, how long they're, I just lost the word for it. Term is 6 years, by the way. 18th Amendment was the prohibition of alcohol. For a hot second in America, alcohol was illegal. Like alcohol was illegal, and it caused a bunch of issues. There was a big movement up before this where a bunch of people were like, alcohol causes a lot of issues. People are alcoholics. Nobody's, acting right. We need to fix this. And so they actually got a constitutional amendment to prohibit alcohol. But did that stop people from engaging with alcohol? No. Instead, it created a bunch of like organized crime and criminal behavior because people were like making their own alcohol. There was a lot of like mob gang rule where they were distributing alcohol. Actually, Dawsonville, because of this amendment, is like what created them making the moonshine and then making the cars that were faster than the police cars so they could outrun them and deliver their moonshine. So there's history here. This is not me endorsing the use of alcohol either. Don't hear that. This is just me saying that they handled a problem and it ended up not producing the solution they wanted. So you'll notice that they're going to change that later. But for a hot second, alcohol was completely unconstitutional in the US. In the 19th Amendment, women were allowed to vote. So way up there, that only applied to men being able to vote. Only men. So women got the right to vote in 1920, which my grandfather was born 1 year after that. 1 year. My grandfather, now he's not living anymore, but he passed away recently. I can't believe that in one man's lifetime, that's all it took before women could have been voted or couldn't have voted. It's crazy to me. That's like 100 years ago, but like, that's not that long, y'all. That's not that long. 20th Amendment. This is like when the presidential term begins, which is January 20th. And like the vice president's going to do the president's job if they can't, because we were like, oh, we probably need to figure that out if the president gets sick or whatever, because people got sick a lot back in the day. You know what I'm saying? So like, okay, who does the job for the president if they can't do it? All right, moving on. We're almost done. The 21st Amendment, guess what? Alcohol is no longer prohibited. And so they just said, scratch that. Now, do they go erase the 18th Amendment? No, they leave it there. You can't just get rid of it. Like you can't delete. You're supposed to leave it there for posterity, but then you can amend your amendment. 22nd Amendment, you can only serve 2 terms as president. Up until this point, presidents could serve as many terms as they wanted, but they only served 2 as like a tradition. They just, because George Washington only served 2. And so they saw that it's like, okay, this is like George Washington was it. So we're going to follow his model. And hang on just a second. Bye-bye. We're going to follow his model, and we're not going to serve more than 2 terms. Except, anybody know the one president that served more than 2 terms? Anybody know? This person served almost 4 terms. Anybody know? Everybody else, 2 terms or 1 or less, because some presidents died before their first term. It was FDR. FDR served almost 4 terms. He died in his 4th term suddenly. But they, after that, were like, that was a long time to have a president. It's only 1 person. So we're just going to limit that to 2 terms. So that's what they did. And a term is 4 years. So presidents can only serve 2 terms. They don't have to be back to back either. President, I think it was Garfield, who served 2 terms separately. Like he served 4 years, was like, I'm done. A guy served, and then he went back, which is kind of weird. Presidents are weird, y'all. It's like whole thing is like studying presidents is fascinating. All right. 23rd Amendment, Washington D.C. can vote president now. They didn't allow them to until like 1990. No, after that, 1960 thereabouts. So anyway, relatively recently, if you lived in D.C., you could not vote for president, even though the president lived and worked where you were. But there was a reason for that. But now they can. They're not allowed to have more electors than the least populated states. They always are going to have the least amount of electors, but they are allowed to vote for president now. 24th Amendment, people do not have to pay to vote. That's another thing where people were acting up and they were saying, we don't want people to vote. We only want people with money to vote. And it's very discriminatory, and not just money. They did not want low income people to vote. They didn't want people of color to vote. And so they said, well, we're going to levy a poll tax, which means if you don't pay this money, you're not going to get to vote. And that was completely unconstitutional and wrong. Well, it wasn't unconstitutional. They decided by making an amendment that it would be. And so now you do not have to pay to vote. Voting is free for everyone. Even if you have lots of outstanding debts for other things, you do not have to pay to vote. 25th Amendment, what happens if the president resigns, dies, or can no longer do their job? So in the event that the president dies or resigns or is incapacitated, the vice president comes next. We know that, but then like the whole line of succession is under that. and what happens if you need to remove a president from office, et cetera, et cetera. Yes. So, and because, so John said before the amendments, they only wanted rich white men to vote. Well, look at who created the Constitution. It was wealthy, white, land-owning males. And so that was who the Constitution was designed initially to benefit the most. We have had to add in amendment for women, amendments for people of color, in order to balance the scale. And that's just fact, y'all. That's why those amendments are there. But yes, that's an astute observation, John. 26th Amendment, you can vote at age 18. So before then, I don't know what the age was. If anybody knows, please tell me. I don't know, but they said it at 18. It's constitutional. So you can't like vote at age 18 in Georgia, but then go to Alabama and you could be 17. And you gotta be 18 across the board or older. And then the most recent amendment they did was in 1992. So they don't add amendments all the time. If Congress salaries are ever adjusted, so Congress is the House and the Senate, okay? So these people that we elect to make the laws, if their salaries, the money that they make is ever adjusted, like we want to pay them more, we want to pay them less, that does not go into effect until after the next election. So we can't just change how much they're paid and then the next day their paycheck goes way down. They're basically like, if you want to change how much money I make, can you just wait till the next election, please, so that I can decide if I want to run again or not, you know? So that was what that one is. Anybody got questions? Those are all the amendments. All of them. There are a lot of amendments that have been sitting in like the bill form that have just never been ratified. They're just been for decades. Like I forget one. Oh my gosh, the Equal Rights Act for men and women. That one has been sitting there for decades and has not been passed, may not ever be passed. Don't know. So I don't know. Questions, comments, concerns. Anybody want me to go over a certain one again? Want to ask me a question about, well, where does such and such fall in? Blah, blah, blah. Because you'll notice there are lots of things that are not covered here. Again, like the internet and all of that, that kind of gets sorted in other places. There are also special acts that get passed that don't make it in here. Or, I mean, also when you click on these amendments, there's like a huge amount of like breakdown underneath it. It's just like they give the amendment and then they give like, subsections underneath this. There's a lot of content that I didn't put in just for the sake of time, but questions, comments, concerns. Now you should know your rights. Now you should know what you're entitled to as a citizen of the United States of America, and kind of what that looks like. Let me go back a little bit. Yeah. Anybody. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure. Again, not a lawyer, not an attorney, not an expert on constitutional law, just a hobbyist, someone who enjoys this stuff. So I have a special interest in not only government, but also the Revolutionary War itself. So I like to study that stuff. All right, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.